State Auditor Rebecca Otto is seeking re-election. Madam State Auditor, welcome to Democratic Visions.
Thank you.
Rebecca, I've heard that the State Auditor is, in effect, a watchdog for Minnesota taxpayers. Is that an apt description of the role that you play in state government?
Well, watchdog has been used for the office for the description. What I like to say is that I've been very proactive and preventative with local governments to help them do the right thing in the first place when spending tax dollars, rather than just catching them doing the wrong thing. So it's a little bit different. I like to get on the front end rather than just catching them in a bad position, and I've worked very hard to help local governments safeguard public funds and assets, especially in an economic downturn. Sometimes there's an increase in fraud, and so there's a lot of good work going on in local governments around the state right now.
What's the universe that you're dealing with?
Well, in terms of auditing, we audit most counties, and we audit the 3 cities of the first class, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Duluth, but there's over 4,300 units of local governments in the state. So if someone calls in and says there's been misuse of public funds, it could be any of those entities. And so our work is varied. We collect a lot of financial information from almost all local governments except school districts. We do a little bit of work with school districts. So it's pretty broad. Basically, those local governments spend about $20 billion per year.
$20 billion?
With a B. It's a lot of money.
Wow.
And so that's why our office is so important. We do the behind-the-scenes work that everyone hopes is happening. They're not sure who's doing it. And the good news is I don't look at people's tax returns.
Right.
That's what I always tell people.
Well, what can you tell us? What kind of grade would you give the municipalities and public bodies that you're working with?
Like I said, there's a lot of good work going on. I think the challenge right now for local governments is that they've continued to have local government aid cut. And the governor said he's going to unallot local government aid again. Well, that's money that our entities use to fund services. Now, not all communities get local government aid.
Can we step back and can
Sure.
you just describe for our viewers what local government aid is and what is the source of those funds?
The source of the funds are the state legislature many, many years ago decided that they were going to try to equalize things for communities around the state, and it would depend on the age of their infrastructure. There's formulas they use to determine who gets aid and how much they get. And it was supposed to be the equalizer, so that no matter where you lived in the state, there was public safety, you know, a sheriff or police officer would show up if you needed help, that we'd have good, you know, streets and highways, we'd get them cleared in the winter, the cracks would be repaired, the bridges would be in good shape.
So there'd be a certain threshold of services consistent
Yes.
through the state?
Yes, exactly, because our communities are all a little bit different. And in the metro area, we're thriving. Not all communities are thriving around the state. So what's been happening over the last several years is that the state's been giving less and less aids to our communities. And I issued a report recently, our 2008 City Finance Report. And basically what it showed was the less aid our communities are getting from the state, that equalizer, they've had to raise property taxes in it with an equal proportion. So the revenues, property tax revenues, over the last 10 years have increased 102% for cities. Now that doesn't mean your property tax bill has gone up 102%. But there's a real policy issue going on right now.
But I can guarantee you your property tax bill has gone up over that time period.
Most likely.
Yes.
And so, you know, it's real for people in homes and in our communities, even apartment buildings. We're all affected by it. And I would say right now, with the foreclosure crisis that we're in and the economic downturn, everyone's struggling. Families are struggling and their budgets are tighter. And I think as a state we need to review the policy of, first of all, doing any further unallotments to aids to our cities and communities. And because we don't want to force more people out of their homes. So I brought it to the attention of the governor and to the legislature, and I'll continue to do that because I think they need to review the policy. The state has had a long-term budget deficit, and it's not going away. It's a structural budget deficit. And the new governor, we know we're getting a new governor for sure, but the new governor and the new legislature is going to have an honest conversation about how we're running the state. And they took on a big chunk of the property taxes for schools several years ago, and they never raised revenue to do it. So they took it off the property taxes, but they never really paid for it. And that doesn't work. We're in a reactive mode as a state. Now, I don't get to set policy, but I can certainly talk to lawmakers because it has an impact on our communities. And in this area of the state, communities are doing fairly well, but I'll tell you, I've seen communities where it's a real struggle. And they're cutting into essential services. And basically what our cities do is our cities provide public safety. And the other big expense is streets and highways, plowing, you know, sealing, making sure they're safe, restriping the lines. I know I need that in the wintertime and at night.
What do you say, or perhaps you even had legislators bring this up, the cities should just be tightening up their belts?
Well, they have been. Many entities have. Now, I've talked to some entities, some cities who said, we've actually found some efficiencies. We're doing a better job. But at the end of the day, my city finance report revealed that over the last 10 years, if you factor in inflation, expenditures for cities have not kept up with inflation. They've decreased by 7%. So they have been decreasing expenditures. They have been tightening their belts.
What other hats do you wear as state auditor? Do you serve on various boards and commissions?
Yes, I serve on 6 state boards, and they're all very, very important. There's one that I've been honored to serve on all of them, but Minnesota Housing Finance Agency Board, I serve on that.
What's the function of that?
Well, basically what they do is we work to ensure affordable housing throughout the state of Minnesota. And sometimes people say affordable housing. It's affordable housing for our veterans, for our seniors, for families. It's for all kinds of people. Sometimes we'll have housing for people with disabilities. And we make sure there's good housing around the state because people should be able to have a home. And my work on that board's been really a lot of fun. We also work to end long-term homelessness. And a lot of our chronically homeless folks are actually veterans.
Really?
And so it's really important to make sure that we get them out underneath bridges and off the streets. When I got into office, I thought, I said to my son, who's almost 15, I said, honey, I want to leave a legacy because I spend time away from home. And so I thought, how do you leave a legacy as a state auditor? Well, they spend $20 billion a year. There's over 4,000 units of local government, and there's a lot of energy that's being used with those local governments. We have to have public safety. We have to maintain our streets and highways. So what I thought was, why don't we help local governments reduce their energy costs? Because there's some low-hanging fruit there. And so I issued a report that ended up winning a National Excellence in Accountability Award, and it's being looked at from around the country, so Minnesota can be a leader in this. It was really to help local governments make wise investments in reducing energy costs that were appropriate for their entity, and it was also to help them find the money, because the money is usually the big issue for them. Now we're issuing a follow-up report to show the results. We issued that back in July of 2008. And a follow-up report will be coming out very soon, and it will show the results of the entities we featured in the first report, and how much energy how much they've reduced their energy by, and also how much money they've saved. Because we need to help. We need to keep helping them. And I found out from a state senator that the state has used our report to help develop financing mechanisms at the state level for them. So I'm very excited that we can do this because it can be a substantial, not only more efficient government. We innovate, but it also is good for the environment and good for the taxpayers.
Do you believe in your next term you'll be able to continue to come up with programs of that innovative sense?
Well, Tim, if I'm honored by the people of Minnesota to be able to serve another term, which I would love to because I love this job, I have so much more up my sleeve. I have a rule when I serve in public office: if I don't feel that I can make something better, I'm not going to run again. I'm not done. I would love to do more.
Your opponents include a former state auditor and 3 other Republican candidates.
Well, unfortunately, I call it silly season, and politics can get nasty. My guess is that my opponent will probably be Pat Anderson, the former state auditor, and I think that the race will be very clear. It's kind of a night and day. We have very different approaches.
Didn't she want to be governor, and now she's back to state auditor?
Yes, her governor campaign didn't go very well for her. And so basically, she doesn't think that I've done enough political grandstanding as state auditor. No, I'm serious. She thinks I should have used the office. I don't. That's not my style. My style is to put my nose to the grindstone and oversee taxpayer dollars. We've done more investigations. We've done more people. Unfortunately, there's been more criminal charges, but my staff has been very productive. And I've had my nose to the grindstone. She likes to political grandstand and basically catch local governments doing the wrong thing. I'm trying to help them do the right thing. And I've been pushing for innovation. She simply says government's bad. It's a very clear choice in this election.
Shall we say a stark contrast?
There's a stark contrast, and that's what I hear as I travel the state, no matter who I talk to, including local government officials.
Why would people go for the dark side when they can go for someone that's trying to do something positive? I mean, I'm serious about that.
Well, you know what? I hope that Minnesotans choose my style. It's not for my political gain. The work that I've done is for the betterment of our state, to make stronger communities, and to move government forward with the challenges that we have.
Well, I guess you're going to show her, aren't you?
I hope so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.